What would you do if your husband handed you divorce papers out of nowhere, with every detail of your secret laid bare? How could everything flip so suddenly, just when I thought he was too weak to stand up for himself? I never imagined he would outplay me at my own game. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible stories. My name is Eudora Finch, and I thought I had everything figured out. At 32, I worked as an administrative assistant at a mid-sized marketing firm. Nothing glamorous but steady work. My husband Martin, 34, was an accountant at a local firm. We'd been married 8 years and had a 6-year-old daughter named Lydia. The problem was simple. Martin was boring. Predictably, mind-numbingly boring. That Tuesday evening, I sat on our beige couch in our suburban living room, deliberately typing flirtatious messages to Jason Bell, my co-worker. Jason was 29, charming, and everything Martin wasn't. He made me laugh. He made me feel alive. "Hey, gorgeous. Can't wait to see you tomorrow," I typed, making sure my phone screen was visible to Martin, who sat 3 feet away, helping Lydia with her math homework. "Daddy, what's 7 times 8? Lydia asked, her small voice cutting through the tension I was trying to create. 56, sweetheart," Martin answered patiently, not even glancing at my phone. His brown hair was slightly messy from running his fingers through it, a habit he'd developed when concentrating. He wore his usual khakis and button-down shirt, the uniform of suburban mediocrity. I huffed loudly, hoping to get his attention. Nothing. "Martin, did you hear what I said about the office party next Friday?" I lied smoothly. "Jason's going to be my partner for the team-building activities." "That's nice," Martin replied absently, still focused on Lydia's worksheet. "Remember to carry the one here, Lydia." My phone buzzed. "You're so beautiful, Eudora. Your husband doesn't deserve you," Jason had replied. I smiled widely, holding the phone where Martin could see it. Still nothing. How could he be so oblivious? Or worse, how could he care so little? "I'm going to call Mom," I announced, standing abruptly. "At least someone in my life shows some emotion." Martin finally looked up, his grey eyes meeting mine briefly. There was something in his expression I couldn't quite read. Not hurt, not anger, just calculation. But that was impossible. Martin didn't calculate anything except tax returns. In the kitchen, I dialed my mother's number. Verna answered on the second ring. "Eudora, honey, how are you?" "Mom, I need to talk. It's about Martin." "What's that man done now? Or should I say, what hasn't he done?" My mother had never been Martin's biggest fan. She thought I'd settled for security over passion. "He's just so emotionally unavailable. I could have an affair right in front of him and he wouldn't even notice." "Well, maybe you should. Life's too short to waste on a man who doesn't appreciate what he has. You're beautiful, intelligent, and you deserve someone who fights for you." Her words felt like validation. "You're right, Mom. I deserve better than this." After hanging up, I returned to the living room, where Martin was now reading Lydia a bedtime story. They sat together on the couch, Lydia curled against his side, completely absorbed in his animated reading of Charlotte's Web. For a moment, watching them together, I felt a pang of something. Guilt? Regret? But I pushed it away. Martin was a good father. I'd give him that, but being a good father didn't make him a good husband. My phone buzzed again. Jason had sent a photo of himself at the gym, shirtless, with the caption, "Thinking of you during my workout." I giggled loud enough for Martin to hear. He glanced over, his eyes taking in my phone, my expression, the obvious flirtation. But instead of jealousy or anger, he simply returned to reading. "Why is Daddy sad?" Lydia asked suddenly, her big brown eyes, Martin's eyes, looking between us. "Daddy's not sad, sweetheart," I said quickly. "He's just tired from work." But Lydia was right. There was something different about Martin lately. He'd been quieter than usual, more distant. I'd assumed it was just his natural boring personality amplifying, but maybe. "Come on, Lydia, time for bed," Martin said, closing the book. As he stood, carrying our daughter, he looked back at me with that same unreadable expression. Something cold ran down my spine, but I shook it off. This was Martin we were talking about. The man who got excited about spreadsheets and organized his sock drawer by color. What could he possibly be planning? Saturday morning arrived with the promise of our monthly brunch with friends and family. I'd been looking forward to it all week, mainly because Jason had agreed to join us. It would be the perfect opportunity to show Martin what a real man looked like. The Sunnyside Cafe buzzed with weekend energy as our group gathered around two pushed-together tables. Martin sat quietly at one end, wearing his typical weekend uniform of khakis and a polo shirt. I'd deliberately chosen the seat next to Jason, who looked effortlessly handsome in jeans and a fitted t-shirt that showed off his gym-toned physique. "Eudora, you look absolutely stunning today," Jason said loudly enough for everyone to hear, his hand briefly touching my shoulder. "That dress is incredible on you." I beamed, smoothing the red sundress I'd bought specifically for this occasion. "Oh, Jason, you're too sweet. It's so nice to have someone notice when I make an effort." Martin continued studying his menu, as if it contained the secrets of the universe. My mother Verna, seated across from us, smiled approvingly. "Jason, you certainly know how to make a woman feel appreciated. Some men could learn from your example." Martin's parents, Sharon and Frank, exchanged uncomfortable glances. Sharon's lips pressed into a thin line, while Frank cleared his throat and attempted to change the subject. "So, Martin, how's the busy season treating you at the firm?" "Fine, Dad. Just the usual tax preparation chaos," Martin replied evenly, still not looking up from his menu. Jason leaned closer to me, his cologne mixing with the smell of coffee and bacon. "You know, Eudora, I was thinking we should grab lunch sometime. Just the two of us. There's this new Italian place downtown that's supposed to be incredibly romantic." I giggled, placing my hand on his arm. "That sounds wonderful. Martin never takes me anywhere romantic anymore. He thinks Applebee's is fine dining." "Hey now," Martin said quietly, finally looking up. "We went to that steakhouse for your birthday." "That was 8 months ago, Martin, and you spent half the dinner talking about some clients' tax deductions." Our friends Sarah and Tom shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Sarah, my longtime friend since college, gave me a warning look that I chose to ignore. Jason laughed, a sound rich with implied intimacy. "Well, I'd never bore a beautiful woman with talk about taxes. Life's too short not to focus on what really matters." His eyes locked with mine. "Like making sure the woman you care about feels cherished every single day." "Exactly," I exclaimed, perhaps a bit too loudly. "See, Martin, that's how a man talks to a woman he values." Martin's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly, but he said nothing. Instead, he signaled the waitress. "Check, please," he said quietly. "But we haven't even ordered yet," I protested. "I'm not feeling well. I think I'll head home." Martin pulled out his wallet, placing enough cash on the table to cover everyone's meals. "Enjoy your brunch." As he stood to leave, I called after him. "Martin, don't be ridiculous. Sit down." But he was already walking away, his shoulders straight, his pace measured and deliberate. Jason squeezed my hand sympathetically. "Don't worry about him, beautiful. Some guys just can't handle being around real confidence. He's probably intimidated." I turned to our friends with an exaggerated sigh. "See what I have to deal with? He's too pathetic to even care that another man is flirting with his wife. What kind of husband just walks away like that?" Sarah frowned. "Eudora, maybe you're being a little what? Honest? I'm sorry if the truth makes everyone uncomfortable, but I deserve a man who would fight for me. Martin just proved he's not that man." My mother nodded vigorously. "You're absolutely right, honey. A real man would have said something, done something. This just proves what I've been saying for years." But Martin's mother Sharon had heard enough. "Eudora, That man has worked himself to the bone providing for you and Lydia. He loves you more than you apparently deserve." "Sharon," I gasped, genuinely shocked by her uncharacteristic outburst. "Come on, Frank, we're leaving too." Sharon stood, her face flushed with anger and disappointment. As they walked away, I noticed something on the table where Martin had been sitting. His phone lay face down, forgotten in his hasty departure. Or was it forgotten? The screen was black, but something about it nagged at me. Had Martin been recording our conversation? No, that was paranoid thinking. This was Martin, the man who asked permission to change the thermostat. Jason's voice brought me back to the moment. "So, about that Italian restaurant?" But for the first time in weeks, I wasn't thinking about Jason. I was thinking about the look in Martin's eyes as he'd walked away. It hadn't been hurt or anger. It had been disappointment, and something else, something that looked almost like satisfaction. Monday morning at the office felt different. Maybe it was the way Jason's eyes followed me as I walked to my desk. Or maybe it was the memory of Martin's strange expression from Saturday's brunch. Either way, I felt emboldened, ready to push boundaries I'd only flirted with before. "Good morning, gorgeous," Jason whispered as he passed my cubicle, his hand briefly brushing my shoulder. "You've been on my mind all weekend." The familiar thrill shot through me. This was what I'd been missing: passion, excitement, the feeling that someone actually wanted me. "Jason," I said, glancing around to make sure our supervisor wasn't nearby, "about that Italian restaurant you mentioned. This Friday. I'll pick you up at 7. I'll have to tell Martin I'm working late again." Jason's smile faltered slightly. "You know, Eudora, eventually you're going to have to decide what you really want. I'm not interested in playing games forever." His words sent a spike of panic through me. I couldn't lose Jason. He was the only excitement in my otherwise mundane life. "I know. I just need a little more time to figure things out." "Figure what out? You said yourself your husband doesn't even care. What's holding you back?" Before I could answer, my desk phone rang. "Eudora Finch, how may I help you?" "Mrs. Finch, this is Janet from Lydia's school. She's been asking to call her daddy all morning. She seems upset about something." My stomach clenched. "Is she sick?" "Not physically, but she's been very quiet and clingy. She keeps saying she wants to go home to make sure daddy's okay." After hanging up, I stared at my computer screen without seeing it. Lydia had been acting strange lately, more withdrawn, asking odd questions about why Mommy and Daddy didn't laugh together anymore. "Everything okay?" Jason asked, appearing at my cubicle. "Just kid stuff. Nothing important." But it felt important. It felt like everything was spinning faster than I could control. That afternoon, my sister Melody called during my lunch break. "Eudora, we need to talk." "I'm kind of busy, Mel." "Too busy to discuss the fact that you're destroying your marriage. Sarah told me about Saturday's brunch. What the hell are you thinking?" I stepped outside the building for privacy. "I'm thinking that I deserve to be happy. Martin doesn't appreciate me, Melody. He never has." "So you're going to have an affair? Is that your solution?" "I'm not having an affair." The lie came automatically, even though I knew exactly where things with Jason were heading. "Really? Because from what I heard, you're pretty damn close. And doing it in public, in front of his parents. Eudora, that's cruel even for you." "Even for me? What's that supposed to mean?" "It means you've always been selfish, but this is a new low. You have a daughter, for God's sake. What happens to Lydia when your marriage implodes?" "Lydia will be fine. Kids are resilient." "No, Eudora. Kids are damaged by parents who put their own wants above their family's needs. Trust me on this. I see it every day in my job." Melody worked as a family therapist, which made her opinion both more credible and more annoying. "Look, I appreciate your concern, but my marriage is my business." "And when Martin finds out, what then?" "Martin won't do anything. He never does. He'll just accept it and move on, like he accepts everything else." There was a long pause before Melody spoke again. You really don't know your husband at all, do you? That evening, I arrived home to find Martin in the kitchen, preparing dinner with methodical precision. Lydia sat at the counter, coloring in a workbook. "Mommy," she called, running to hug my legs. "I missed you." "I missed you too, baby." I kissed the top of her head, breathing in her little girl scent of strawberry shampoo and playground dust. "Daddy made my favorite spaghetti. He said we're going to have a family dinner tonight, just the three of us." I looked at Martin questioningly. He rarely made special announcements about dinner. "I thought it would be nice," he said simply, not meeting my eyes. "We haven't spent much time together as a family lately." During dinner, Martin was unusually attentive, asking Lydia about school, making her laugh with silly voices for her stuffed animals. He even complimented my new haircut, which I'd gotten specifically hoping Jason would notice. "You look beautiful tonight, Eudora," Martin said as we cleared the dishes. "That color really suits you." I stared at him suspiciously. "Thank you." "I know I don't say it enough, but I want you to know that I notice things. I notice a lot more than you might think." Something in his tone made me pause. "What do you mean?" "Just that I'm not as oblivious as you might believe." After Lydia was in bed, I sat on the couch scrolling through my phone. Jason had sent several messages throughout the day, each one more suggestive than the last. Can't stop thinking about Friday night. I have some ideas about how we can spend our time. You deserve so much better than what you have. Let me show you how a real man treats a woman. I'm falling for you, Eudora. Hard. My heart raced as I typed back. I can't wait to see you Friday. I think I'm ready to take this to the next level. Martin emerged from Lydia's room and sat beside me on the couch. For once, instead of grabbing his laptop or a book, he just sat there. "Good day at work?" he asked. "The usual, you know how it is." "Actually, I don't. You never really tell me about your work anymore. What's Jason like? You mention him a lot lately." My phone nearly slipped from my hands. "Jason? He's just a coworker. Why?" "Just curious. He seems to make you happy." I studied Martin's profile as he stared at the television. His expression was calm, almost serene, but something felt off. "Martin, is everything okay? You're acting strange." "Am I? I feel like I'm finally seeing things clearly for the first time in a while." "What does that mean?" He turned to look at me directly, his grey eyes holding mine. "It means I think it's time for some changes around here. Big changes." A chill ran down my spine, but I forced myself to laugh. "You're being dramatic. What kind of changes?" "You'll see," Martin said, standing up. "I'm going to bed. Don't stay up too late." As he walked toward our bedroom, I called after him. "Martin, what did you mean about changes?" But he was already gone, leaving me alone with my racing thoughts and the uncomfortable feeling that I'd just missed something very important. Friday evening arrived with the weight of anticipation and dread. I'd told Martin I had to work late for a special project, the lie rolling off my tongue with practiced ease. He'd simply nodded and said he'd handle Lydia's bedtime routine. Jason picked me up 3 blocks from my house in his black sports car, the kind of vehicle Martin would call impractical and compensatory. "You look incredible," Jason breathed as I slid into the passenger seat. The red dress I'd chosen clung to my curves, and I'd spent an hour on my makeup. "Thank you, I needed this tonight." The Italian restaurant was everything Jason had promised. Dim lighting, intimate booths, and a wine list that cost more than Martin spent on groceries in a month. For 3 hours, I felt like the woman I used to be before marriage and motherhood had dulled my edges. Jason reached across the table, taking my hand. "Eudora, I meant what I said earlier. I'm falling for you. I know this situation is complicated, but I can't keep pretending this is just casual flirtation." My heart hammered against my ribs. "Jason, I think you should leave him." The words hung between us like a bridge I wasn't sure I was ready to cross. "It's not that simple. There's Lydia to consider and—" "Kids adapt. My parents divorced when I was 7, and I turned out fine. Lydia would rather have a happy mother than parents who were just going through the motions. He was right, wasn't he? Martin and I were just going through the motions. We'd been roommates more than lovers for years now. What are you suggesting? I'm suggesting you deserve better than a man who doesn't even fight for you. When's the last time Martin surprised you? When's the last time he made you feel like this? Jason's thumb traced circles on my palm, sending electricity up my arm. I need time to think. Of course, but don't take too long. Life's short, and I'm not getting any younger. When Jason dropped me off, he walked me to my car, which I'd parked several streets away from the house. "Thank you for tonight," I whispered. "Thank you for giving us a chance." He leaned in, and for a moment I thought he might kiss me. Instead, he pressed his lips to my forehead, a gesture somehow more intimate than a kiss would have been. "Call me tomorrow." "I will." I drove home in a daze, my mind spinning with possibilities and fears. What would life look like without Martin? What would it look like with Jason? The house was dark when I arrived home at nearly midnight. Martin had left a plate of dinner for me in the refrigerator with a note. "Hope your project went well. M." Even his thoughtfulness felt like an accusation. I found him in our bedroom, apparently asleep, though something about his breathing seemed too controlled, too measured. I changed into my pajamas quietly, slipping into bed beside the man I'd married 8 years ago. In the darkness, I studied his profile. Martin wasn't handsome in the conventional sense, not like Jason with his sharp jawline and gym-sculpted body. But there was something solid about Martin, something dependable. He'd never missed one of Lydia's school plays, never forgotten my birthday, never raised his voice in anger. So why wasn't that enough anymore? Saturday morning brought the weekly family dinner at my mother's house, a tradition I usually enjoyed but now dreaded. The whole family would be there, my parents, my sister Melody, Martin's parents, and us. The perfect audience for the tension that had been building all week. "Eudora, darling, you look radiant," my mother exclaimed as we arrived. "Doesn't she look radiant, Martin?" "She always looks beautiful," Martin replied quietly, helping Lydia out of her coat. Melody shot me a knowing look from across the room. She'd been watching me carefully since our phone conversation, and I could feel her disapproval radiating like heat. During dinner, my mother dominated the conversation as usual, regaling us with gossip from her book club and complaints about the neighbors. Martin's parents, Sharon and Frank, listened politely while cutting their pot roast into precise, methodical bites. "Martin, you're awfully quiet tonight," my mother observed. "Everything all right at work?" "Work's fine, Verna. Thank you for asking. You know, I was telling Eudora just the other day that she seems so much happier lately. There's a spring in her step that hasn't been there in years." I nearly choked on my wine. "Mom, what? It's true. You've been glowing lately, almost like you're in love." The silence that followed was deafening. Melody stared at her plate. Sharon's fork froze halfway to her mouth. Frank cleared his throat uncomfortably. Martin, however, remained perfectly calm. "Love can certainly change a person," he said evenly. "It can make them do things they never thought they were capable of." Something in his tone made my blood run cold. "Speaking of change," Martin continued, setting down his fork, "I've been doing a lot of thinking lately, about priorities, about what really matters in life." "That's wonderful, dear," Sharon said quickly, clearly trying to steer the conversation away from dangerous waters. "Yes, it's been very enlightening. I've realized that sometimes the people we trust most are the ones capable of the deepest betrayal." My mother frowned. "Martin, what are you talking about?" "I'm talking about the importance of documentation, of evidence, of making sure that when someone shows you who they really are, you believe them." I felt like I was drowning in plain sight. "Martin, I think you're being a bit dramatic." "Am I? I don't think I'm being dramatic enough." Melody suddenly stood up. "I think I should check on Lydia. She's been very quiet." We all turned to look at our daughter, who had been coloring silently in the corner. Her usual chatter had been replaced by an unsettling stillness, and she kept glancing between Martin and me with worried eyes. "Lydia, sweetie, are you okay?" I asked. She nodded but didn't speak. "She's been asking a lot of questions lately," Martin said. "About why Mommy comes home so late, about why Mommy gets so many text messages, about why Mommy laughs at her phone but not at Daddy's jokes anymore." The room fell silent except for the ticking of my mother's grandfather clock. "I think," Martin said, standing slowly, "that I'll be staying at my parents' house for a while. I need some time to think about the future." "Martin, don't be ridiculous," I said, forcing a laugh. "You're overreacting to whatever you think you know." "What I think I know?" Martin's voice remained steady, but there was steel underneath. "Eudora, I don't think I know anything. I know everything." He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a manila envelope, placing it carefully on the table. "What's that?" I whispered. "Insurance," he replied, "for when thinking time is over." Martin kissed Lydia goodbye, hugged his parents, and nodded politely to my mother and Melody. As he reached the door, he turned back one last time. "Eudora, you might want to be more careful about where you park your car. You never know who might be watching." And then he was gone, leaving me staring at the envelope he'd left behind, my heart pounding so hard, I was sure everyone could hear it. The envelope sat on my nightstand for 3 days like a ticking bomb. I'd brought it home from my mother's house, telling myself I'd open it when I was ready. But each time I reached for it, my hands shook and I pulled back. Martin hadn't returned my calls or texts. According to Lydia, Daddy was thinking about important grown-up stuff and would be home soon. But I could see the confusion and sadness in my daughter's eyes every time she asked when Daddy was coming home. Work had become my refuge. Jason sensed my distraction and had been extra attentive, bringing me coffee and leaving sweet notes on my desk. Wednesday afternoon, he suggested we grab lunch at a quiet cafe across town. "You seem stressed," he said as we sat in a corner booth. "Want to talk about it?" "Martin's acting strange. He's staying at his parents' house and he left this envelope." I trailed off, not sure how much to reveal. "Maybe this is your chance. If he's already pulling away, maybe he's doing the hard part for you." Jason reached across the table and took my hand. "Eudora, I meant what I said Friday night. I want to be with you, really be with you." Looking into his warm brown eyes, I felt the last of my resistance crumble. "I want that too." "Yeah?" "Yeah." When we walked to the parking lot after lunch, Jason pulled me close. "I can't wait anymore," he whispered, and before I could respond, his lips were on mine. The kiss was everything I'd imagined, passionate, desperate, full of promises. For those few seconds, nothing else existed except the feeling of being wanted, truly wanted. We broke apart breathlessly, and Jason smiled. That was worth waiting for. I was so lost in the moment that I didn't notice the car parked across the street, or the small camera mounted on its dashboard, or the fact that it had been there when we arrived and was still there as we left. That evening, I finally worked up the courage to call Martin. "Hello, Eudora." "Martin, this is ridiculous. Come home. Lydia misses you and we need to talk." "I agree that we need to talk, but not yet." "What's in the envelope, Martin?" There was a long pause. "Proof." "Proof of what?" "You know what." My mouth went dry. "I don't know what you think you know, but—" "Eudora, stop. Just stop. We both know what's been happening. The question now is what we're going to do about it." "Martin, if you'd just let me explain." "There's nothing to explain. You've made your choice very clear. Now I'm making mine." The line went dead. I stared at my phone, panic rising in my chest. This wasn't how this was supposed to go. Martin was supposed to be passive, accepting, pathetic. He wasn't supposed to have proof of anything, because he wasn't supposed to be paying attention. Thursday morning brought a call from HR at work. "Eudora, this is Patricia. I need you to come to my office, please." My stomach dropped. "Is everything okay?" "We'll discuss it when you get here." Patricia's office felt like a courtroom as I sat across from her desk. She was a stern woman in her 50s who took company policy very seriously. Eudora, it's come to our attention that you may be involved in an inappropriate workplace relationship. I'm sorry, what? We have reports of public displays of affection in the company parking lot. As you know, our employee handbook clearly states that romantic relationships between co-workers must be disclosed to HR. Who reported this? That's confidential, but I need to ask directly. Are you involved in a romantic relationship with Jason Bell? I wanted to lie, but something in Patricia's expression told me she already knew the answer. It's complicated. It's actually quite simple. Either you are or you aren't, and if you are, we need to discuss how to handle this appropriately, given that you're both married to other people. The meeting lasted 30 minutes and ended with a formal warning in my file and a requirement that Jason and I attend a workshop on professional boundaries. When I returned to my desk, Jason was waiting with a grim expression. "We need to talk," he said. "Did you get called to HR too?" "Yeah, and that's not all. My wife found out." My blood turned to ice. "What?" "Someone sent her photos of us at lunch yesterday and—" He ran his hands through his hair. "The kiss, Eudora. Someone photographed the kiss." "Who would do that?" But even as I asked, I knew the answer. Martin. Somehow Martin had been watching us. "I have to end this," Jason said quietly. "My wife is threatening to take the kids and file for divorce. I can't lose my children." "Jason, wait. I'm sorry, Eudora, I really am. But I have to think about my family now." And just like that, he was gone, leaving me alone with the wreckage of everything I'd thought I wanted. That evening, I sat in my empty house. Lydia was spending the night at my mother's, and finally opened Martin's envelope. Inside were photographs, dozens of them. Jason and me at lunch, holding hands across the table. Jason and me walking to our cars. Jason and me kissing in the parking lot. There were also printed screenshots of text messages, bank statements showing charges at restaurants I'd claimed were work meetings, and a detailed timeline of my activities over the past month. At the bottom of the stack was a single sheet of paper with Martin's neat handwriting. "Eudora, I know you think I'm weak. You think I don't pay attention, don't care enough to fight for our marriage. You're wrong. I've been paying attention to everything. I've been documenting everything. And tomorrow, you'll understand exactly how much I care about protecting what matters most to me." Martin. I was still staring at the note when the doorbell rang. Through the peephole, I saw a young man in a suit holding a clipboard and an official-looking envelope. "Eudora Finch?" "Yes." "You've been served." My hands shook as I signed for the papers and closed the door. The envelope was thick, heavy, and bore the letterhead of Brennan and Associates, Family Law. Inside was a petition for divorce, a motion for temporary custody of Lydia, and a restraining order preventing me from removing any assets from our joint accounts. But it was the cover letter that made my knees buckle. "Mrs. Finch, please find enclosed divorce proceedings initiated by your husband, Martin Finch. As you will see from the attached evidence, Mr. Finch has documented extensive proof of adultery and emotional abandonment. We have also filed for primary physical custody of your minor daughter, citing concerns about the stability of her home environment during your extramarital affair. A hearing has been scheduled for next Friday at 9 a.m. We strongly recommend you retain legal counsel immediately." I sank to the floor of my entryway, the papers scattered around me like the pieces of my shattered life. Martin hadn't been weak or oblivious. He'd been strategic. While I was playing games, he'd been gathering evidence. While I was seeking attention, he'd been protecting our daughter. And now, sitting alone in the house that might not be mine much longer, I finally understood the look I'd seen in his eyes that day at brunch. It hadn't been satisfaction. It had been justice. The law office of Brennan and Associates occupied the top floor of a downtown high-rise, all glass and steel and intimidating efficiency. I sat in the waiting area, my hastily hired lawyer beside me, watching Martin through the conference room's glass walls. He looked different. Gone was the rumpled accountant in khakis and polo shirts. Today he wore a sharp navy suit, his hair neatly styled, his posture confident. He sat calmly next to his attorney, a silver-haired woman who looked like she ate opposing counsel for breakfast. "Mrs. Finch," my lawyer whispered, "I have to be honest with you. The evidence they have is overwhelming. Your best bet is to negotiate for joint custody and hope they don't pursue alienation of affection charges." Alienation of affection? What does that mean? It means in some states, a spouse can sue the person who destroyed their marriage. Given the documentation they have of your affair and the impact on your daughter. He didn't need to finish. I understood. When we entered the conference room, Martin's eyes met mine briefly. There was no anger there, no hurt. Just a cold professional distance that somehow hurt worse than rage would have. "Let's begin," said Martin's attorney, Margaret Brennan. "My client is seeking dissolution of marriage on grounds of adultery, with primary physical custody of the minor child and division of assets according to the prenuptial agreement." "Prenuptial agreement?" I stared at Martin. "We don't have a prenuptial agreement." "Actually, we do," Martin said quietly. "You signed it 3 days before our wedding. It states that in the event of divorce due to infidelity, the unfaithful spouse forfeits claim to the marital home and retirement accounts." The memory came flooding back, signing papers in a rush before the wedding, Martin explaining it was just a formality, required by his company's insurance policy. I'd been so focused on wedding preparations that I'd barely read what I was signing. "That's impossible," I said, but my voice lacked conviction. Margaret Brennan slid a folder across the table. "Page 12, Mrs. Finch. Your signature, witnessed and notarized." My hands shook as I opened the folder. There it was, in black and white, my own signature sealing my fate. "Now, regarding the evidence of adultery," Margaret continued, opening another folder. "We have documented proof spanning 6 weeks, including photographs, text messages, financial records, and witness statements." She began laying out photographs like playing cards. Me and Jason at restaurants. Me and Jason holding hands. Me and Jason kissing in the parking lot. Each image was time-stamped and date-stamped with forensic precision. "How?" I whispered. Martin spoke for the first time since the proceedings began. "You thought I was oblivious, Eudora. You thought I was too weak or too stupid to notice what was happening in my own marriage. But I'm an accountant. I notice discrepancies. I document irregularities. And when I started paying attention, really paying attention, the evidence was everywhere." Margaret continued the presentation. Text messages between Mrs. Finch and Jason Bell, recovered from phone records. She read several of the most damning exchanges, including my message about being ready to take this to the next level. Bank statements showing charges at restaurants during times Mrs. Finch claimed to be working late. The receipts were highlighted in yellow, a trail of lies made visible. And witness statements from co-workers who observed inappropriate behavior in the workplace, leading to an HR investigation and formal reprimand. I turned to my lawyer desperately. "Can they use all this?" "It's all legally obtained evidence, Mrs. Finch. Your husband had every right to investigate suspicious behavior in his own marriage." Margaret wasn't finished. "We also have documentation of the impact on the minor child. Lydia's teacher reports that she's been asking to call her father during school hours, expressing worry that Daddy is sad. The school counselor noted changes in her behavior consistent with children experiencing parental conflict." "You involved Lydia's school?" I stared at Martin in disbelief. "I protected our daughter," Martin replied evenly. "When her teacher called concerned about her behavior, I was honest about the situation at home. A child psychologist will testify that Lydia's emotional well-being requires stability, which means primary residence with the parent who hasn't been engaging in destructive behavior." The room spun around me. This wasn't the Martin I knew, the quiet, passive man who organized his sock drawer and got excited about tax codes. This Martin was strategic, thorough, and absolutely ruthless in protecting what he valued. "What do you want from me?" I asked finally. "I want you to sign the custody agreement giving me primary physical custody, with supervised visitation for you until you complete counseling and demonstrate stability. I want you to agree to the asset division as outlined in the prenuptial agreement, and I want you to stay away from our daughter until you're ready to put her needs above your own desires." "Supervised visitation? She's my daughter too." "She's a 6-year-old child who's been asking why Mommy doesn't love Daddy anymore. She deserves better than being caught in the middle of your midlife crisis." My lawyer leaned over. "Mrs. Finch, given the evidence, this is actually a generous offer. If this goes to trial, you could lose visitation entirely." I looked around the room at the faces staring back at me. Margaret Brennan, professional and impatient. My lawyer, resigned to defeat. And Martin, the man I'd married 8 years ago, who I'd thought I knew completely. "I never meant for any of this to happen," I said. "But it did happen," Martin replied. "You made choices, Eudora. Every text message, every lie, every public humiliation was a choice. Now you have to live with the consequences." Outside the law office, I sat in my car for an hour, staring at the signed papers in my lap. In the span of 2 hours, I'd lost my home, my daughter, and my financial security. The affair that was supposed to make me feel alive had killed everything that actually mattered. My phone buzzed with the text from Jason. "Heard about the divorce. Sorry it didn't work out. Maybe we can grab coffee sometime when things settle down." I stared at the message, remembering how those words from him used to send thrills through me. Now they just felt hollow, meaningless. He'd gotten what he wanted, the excitement of an affair, without any of the real consequences. Those had all fallen on me. I deleted his message without responding and drove to my mother's house to pick up Lydia. "Mommy!" She ran to me as I walked through the door. "Daddy said you're going to live in a different house now. Are you sad?" I knelt down to her level, looking into those grey eyes so much like her father's. "A little sad, baby. But you know what? Sometimes grown-ups need to live in different places so they can learn how to be better people." "Will you learn how to be better?" The question hit me like a physical blow. "I'm going to try, sweetheart. I'm going to try very hard." As I drove Lydia back to Martin's parents' house, the house where she'd be living now, I caught her watching me in the rearview mirror. "Mommy, do you still love Daddy?" I thought about Martin sitting in that conference room, calm and controlled, and absolutely certain of his path. I thought about the man who'd quietly documented every betrayal while still making our daughter's favorite spaghetti and reading her bedtime stories. The man who'd protected what mattered most while I'd been chasing what mattered least. "Yes, baby," I whispered. "I do love Daddy. I just forgot how to show it the right way." 6 months later, I sat in my small apartment, looking at a photo of Lydia from her school play. Martin had sent it to me along with a note. "She asked me to tell you she loves you and hopes you're learning how to be better." I was learning. Slowly, painfully, but I was learning. I'd lost everything I thought I wanted and discovered it had never been what I needed at all. Martin had been right about one thing. I'd thought he was pathetic for not fighting for our marriage, but he had fought, just not the way I'd expected. He'd fought with patience and documentation and strategic planning. He'd fought to protect our daughter and preserve his own dignity. And in the end, the man I'd thought was too weak to stand up for himself had outplayed me completely.